What's up, Reefer Revolutionaries? It's 420 somewhere in the world. It's always 420 here at Reefer Revolution Live. What's going on, Reefer Revolutionaries? DC here. Special broadcast. Breaking news. Press conference. We are going to be joining a live press conference from the lawn of Los Angeles City Hall, the South Lawn Steps, being hosted by the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 770, my former union. I am withdrawn on good standing. But I was a member of UFCW 770 for many years, and they have a cannabis division to help workers in the cannabis unionize in the cannabis space. And they are hosting a press conference this morning on the South Lawn Steps of Los Angeles City Hall, along with a couple other amazing organizations. Cage-Free Cannabis, Youth Justice Coalition, the Social Impact Center, and Trans Latina Coalition, all part of Equity First LA. And this press conference is about a demand to fund the social equity programs in Los Angeles. We reported here on Reefer Revolution Live on our regular Sunday show at 420. Subscribe, get notifications. I think we're going out. Let me know in the chat if we are. Oh, hey, there we go. Jingo. Hi, y'all. Hey, Jingo jumping in. Jojo420 jumping in. Jello Williams. Yeah, you know, these weekday streams are popular. We get a lot of folks that can't join us on Sundays. And so when stuff like this comes up, I enjoy doing them. And Coach Chella is out of the studio this morning. She is on the road, coaching people with plant-based medicine and alternative strategies for care gap training. We're still buzzing from State of Cannabis, guys. I don't know if you saw our Sunday show, but be sure to check that out. It's up on the channel on the Reefer Revolution Live playlist. But we had a great show last week. We had a great show this week because we played a bunch of stuff that we got from the State of Cannabis, which we attended on Saturday, the inaugural State of Cannabis, and with a big focus on social equity. So in our wheelhouse, as Chella puts it, this press conference this morning and the State of Cannabis on Saturday, where presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard was the keynote speaker, and you can see that up on our channel here. Posted that along with our exclusive. We got 3 to 5 minutes with the candidate, and we focused. We got very focused with 2 questions that we talk about a lot here on the show, and she was gracious enough to answer them. And I got a laugh out of the presidential candidate, if I do say so myself. So check that out. That's a lot of fun. I actually may play that this morning while we're waiting for this press conference. Maybe I'll do that for folks that missed it. You know what? I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to play our interview with Tulsi Gabbard while we're waiting for this press conference to start, hosted by the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 770 Cannabis Division, with a demand to release the report. Oh, they are, or maybe they are releasing the report, demanding to fund social equity in Los Angeles because it's been hijacked. Social equity in LA was hijacked, as we reported a couple of weeks ago, by the LAPD to pay their overtime. Isn't that nice? I guess they're so busy locking people up for possession that, or other things, that they had a lot of overtime. And they decided to take it from the social equity funding of Los Angeles. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Let's do that. Let's listen to, let's check out our interview with Tulsi Gabbard before this comes up. If I can find it. How you guys doing? What are you guys smoking this morning? See folks jumping in the chat. Where you at? Where you smoking? How is the cannabis laws going in your neck of the woods? Because, you know, we've got corporate cannabis invasion over here in California. More illegal now that it's legal. And we're fighting the good fight. At least we're trying to. Now, where did my new video go? I should have had it ready, and I didn't. It's on the cover of the video, but now that I'm live, it's not there. So I have to go find it. I'm also monitoring the page for when this press conference starts because I don't want to miss it. That's why we're here, because I want to hear this press conference. So I'm keeping an eye on their page. Let's see, where are you? Here we go.
And we'll do the group. And
okay, found it. You'd think I'd be able to find it because it's on my channel. Okay, guys, here it is. Here's our interview with our time together with Representative Tulsi Gabbard at State of Cannabis. It's kind of cool.
Hey, man, faster than chilling right there.
There we go. Making us all happy.
Yeah.
Yes. Shaka action here.
Hey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi.
I like your earrings.
Oh, thank you so much. I try to be subtle. I think it's important to let the community know that I support cannabis.
Yeah.
Right? So we are from Reefer Revolution.
Yes.
Reefer Revolution Live. And our viewers really want to know what is the main difference between your bill and the Marijuana Justice Act?
My bill, the Ending the Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act, is the only bipartisan bill in Congress that ends the prohibition. So that's the first important note to take. I think it's important because as we see more and more states across the country, not just Democrat states, but now some states that are predominantly Republican representatives or voters are passing legislation at the state level to legalize marijuana in some form or another. So it's important for us as a country that we do this in a bipartisan fashion. And my bill very simply and very directly ends the federal marijuana prohibition by taking marijuana off of the controlled substances list, period. Some of the other pieces of legislation out there, Marijuana Justice Act and some others, they're very good pieces of legislation. They bring in a whole host of other issues that I think are important to address, but they need to be addressed separately so that we can pass this first landmark piece of legislation that really does impact so many of the others. So whether we're talking about the Safe Banking Act, some of the legislation that deals with veterans' ability to access medical marijuana, legislation dealing with industrial hemp. There are so many other pieces of legislation out there. By passing our bill, co-sponsored by Republican Don Young from Alaska, we deal with what is at the heart of the problem. That's really why this bill is so important and why supporters across the country are mobilizing and to get their members of Congress to sign on.
Yes, awesome. We love it.
Yeah.
Our other question is from our young viewer, 13-year-old revolutionary Alexis Bortel, who is a plaintiff in the federal cannabis lawsuit, suing so that she can travel. Would your bill allow her and patients like her to travel, to go to post offices, to go to national parks? Would your bill grant patients their liberty?
Yes. The short answer is yes.
Awesome.
The federal government is what has jurisdiction over interstate commerce, traveling across state lines, the post office, the national parks, the examples that you mentioned. And once again, this is why even as many states, most states are passing legalization in some form or another, it is critical that we end the federal prohibition on marijuana so that people like Alexis can go and be free. Yeah. And that's really what this is about. This is about freedom.
It is.
It is about freedom of choice for every one of us to be able to make our own choices about how we live our lives. Simple as that.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Great to talk to you, Chella.
I have one follow-up.
All right.
Has Donald Trump made any indication of support for your bill? It's a bipartisan bill.
Not to my
25.
knowledge. Not to my knowledge, but he should. There are more and more people in the country, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Libertarian, who are recognizing that the myths and the stigma and the misinformation that's out there has to be left behind in the past. And once again, however you may choose, however you may feel about marijuana yourself, this is about freedom of choice.
I have a suggestion.
What's that?
If you rename the bill the Total Repeal of Unjust Marijuana Prohibition, the Trump Act, you might actually get him on board.
We'll take that under advisement. That's creative. I give you credit for that. Thank you guys so much. It's great to talk to you.
Aloha.
Thank you very much.
Got to be creative, right?
And congratulations for making it to the debate
you.
stage.
That's right.
Thank you.
We're really
looking
stoked.
forward to bringing this and many other issues to the national conversation.
It'd be awesome.
Peace,
Yeah, thank you.
particular.
Peace
Exactly.
indeed.
You got 420 from us to get you there. That's for sure.
So that was pretty cool. We were really surprised. The week before.
This is a blow to
The week before, we had signed on to go, be at this conference and cover the conference, and we're really looking forward to that. And then we found out that Representative Gabbard was going to be there. We made a wish list of folks that we wanted to talk to, and the presidential candidate was at the top of the list, and they were able to get 3 minutes with us exclusively for us to ask a couple of questions, and we were really excited, and we wanted to make sure we got at least 2 good ones out. Hey, I got my joke in, and I made the Congress member laugh, so I think that was pretty cool. If I do say so myself. Thanks for joining us this morning, guys. Little wake and bake and burn in the news, pre-burn, if you will, before our show on Sunday, or after burn, maybe. I don't know. It's Monday's a blur, and now today's kind of our Monday. And we are covering a press conference, which should be starting shortly from the South Lawn steps of Los Angeles City Hall. Repairing the Harms, Creating the Future. Press conference demand social equity in cannabis in Los Angeles. As we reported here on Reefer Revolution Live on Sundays, subscribe, get notifications, and ring that bell. This morning we are multi-streaming on YouTube, Twitch, DLive, and Periscope this morning. So thank you wherever you're joining in. And do what you do there to share the broadcast, because we do cover cannabis news as it breaks when we can, and on Sundays at 4:20. And we are waiting for this press conference to begin with regards to social equity in Los Angeles. As we reported a couple of weeks ago, the Social Equity Fund had been pilfered by the city to use to help pay LAPD overtime, which is beyond ironic. So interesting to see what this lineup of folks have to say. It's a very active and effective collection of organizations that are holding this press conference this morning. UFCW, Local 770, my union, one of my unions, the Cannabis Division, also the Social Impact Center, Equity First Los Angeles, Cage Free Cannabis, all part of this press conference this morning. And they are broadcasting now. Stand by.
The communities, they are deeply scarred by the war on drugs. The city of Los Angeles recognizes this and has made social equity an important policy to define licensing and workforce development. The city has also worked hard to enshrine this in other policies, and cannabis is a key part to this story. But much work still remains. The program is in peril, and there are several places that we need to recenter equity in robustly funding social equity programs and workforce development before starting licensing. Second, in engaging enforcement without criminalization and through a way that actually gives people a pathway from the illicit market. And finally, in developing a robust community reinvestment of cannabis taxes to repair the harms created by the war on drugs. All of these strategies work in partnership. We need to think about it in a collaboration, in a thoughtful way, and focus on restorative justice. We are excited to continue to partner with the industry, community organizations, neighborhood groups, as well as the Department of Cannabis Regulation, City Council, and the mayor in this. As Angelenos, we must work together to fix this, to repair this, to create a robust program that becomes the model for the rest of the nation. We are Angelenos, and this is what we do. Thank you.
Good morning, all. I'd like to start off with a quick story. I need you to do me a favor, and for 5 seconds, I need you to think of someone that you love dearly. I mean dearly. And that individual approaches you and they tell you that they're sick. And you don't realize how sick they are until years go by. You realize that there's nothing that you could do. But as you go along and watch their disease progress, you find out that there is something that could help them, that could help their quality of life. And you need access to it. So I want you to keep that in mind, because that is the lens from which I speak to you today. My name is Yvette McDowell, and I am a retired assistant city prosecutor, almost 2 decades as a first responder, and I chair the Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Equity Committee for California's most influential association, representing 500 plus businesses in the cannabis industry, the California Cannabis Industry Association. Now is the time, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the time. We have an opportunity to shape and define equity as it relates to enforcement. And this will not happen. It will not happen unless social equity is fully funded. It is a must for that to happen. You see, the effects of the war on drugs, they are multifaceted. They are long-lasting. People have suffered for years behind this. They've lost opportunities in education. They've lost housing. They've lost loved ones. This has gone on before them, and this has prevented them from seeking a life that they truly desire. We need programs, folks. We need repair. And social equity must go deep and provide comprehensive support. We need to help people start businesses, give them the necessary skills, the necessary tools to make these businesses sustainable. And we can do that with a fully funded equity program. I talk about a program, and thank you, a progressive and comprehensive enforcement strategy for cannabis. We need to have regulation that is sensible, and it must come from a multi-agency collaborative approach. That approach means LAPD, city attorneys, district attorneys, community organizations, all of the associations involved. We must come together and strategize about this war on drugs and its impact. You will not enforce your way out of this problem. It's simply not going to happen, and I think we have all seen that. This is not a us versus them. This is not a we versus them. This is a collective we as a whole, and only we can do this. We need the creation of multi-step, non-punitive process that helps those wanting to enter into the legal space. We can do that. It does not always have to be penal in nature. I know that as a former prosecutor. You don't have to always lock people up. Let's do some different things. And we need to figure out collectively a definition of what commitment to equity and restorative justice principles look like. Collectively, folks, again, come together and do this. This is not bashing law enforcement. This is not bashing prosecutors, city attorneys. We are asking you to come to the table, sit with a group who can help you get this right. There's been enough time that has gone by. And we need to create a continued path for employment opportunities for those seeking a pathway out of the unregulated market. We want to bring people into regulation so that they can support themselves, they can support families, they can build legacy, they can contribute to the community. They are taxpayers, taxpayers that make things happen. And as I started, I will close because I have just a few minutes to enforce this to you. I want you to move forward through this day, and I want you to think of that loved one that you thought about for that 5 seconds. What would you do if you knew that there was alternative medicine out there that could help someone? That's what I had to do in 2013 when the most important in my life developed Parkinson's. And I watched that disease debilitate my mother to the point that she lost her ability to walk, to talk, to swallow, until ultimately she died as a result of it. And when I learned of the medicinal benefits that cannabis was showing, I vowed that I would not stop fighting for the right, for people that you see behind me to step out, create, and probably develop something that your loved one may need in the future. So go through your day and think about what that means to you. How far would you reach out to make this happen? And I send out a call to action to Los Angeles Police Department. Sit down with us and let us work with you to create the we, to create the collaboration, and let's get this thing done and let's do it right and make Los Angeles the leader to stand out for the rest of the world, because folks, they are watching. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to now introduce Jonathan Favreau, who's a member of UFCW Local 770 and a worker in the cannabis industry.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jonathan Favreau, and I'm a proud union member of UFC Local 770, and I'm a cannabis worker. I've worked in the industry for over 5 years. I've personally seen the health benefits of cannabis, and now as part of my work in the industry, I have the opportunity to support patients who see cannabis as an alternative for pain management and addressing other chronic illnesses. Part of this journey was also talking to my family about my work in the cannabis field and what the plant has the ability to do for people. While at first my parents weren't supportive, working in the professional environment where I have a voice in the job and work for a dispensary that complies with the law allowed them to see that this can be a career for the long term. I know that this isn't available to many other fellow workers in the cannabis industry. There are dozens of legal shops in downtown LA near our licensed shop. Both workers and patients may not have always see or understand the risks or dangers of these shops, or in fact obvious to how unsafe an environment in the illicit market is. When I worked at an illegal shop, I was pressured to do whatever the shop owner requested. At my current shop, where I'm covered by a union contract, I now know I have rights. I truly see myself in cannabis long term. I feel 100% at home in the cannabis industry. I want to give back to the community and one day perhaps even own my own shop. But in order for people like me to see that this is a dream for the future, we have to have the necessary enforcement and resources for this industry to thrive. We need progressive enforcement that universal, not policing that perpetuates the same cycle of criminalization that was part of the quote-unquote war on drugs. Workers and people impacted by the war on drugs need to be part of the conversation. We need to be part of the city's vision for the cannabis industry. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gloria Gonzalez. I'm with the Youth Justice Coalition. And I just really want to remind everyone here how the war on drugs really impacted generations and my generations, and how it targeted Black and brown youth, and how it created disinvestment in our communities, and it created lack of jobs, lack of tangible opportunities, resources, funding. And now that we, have legalized marijuana, we need to look at how do we get that revenue to go into the community and to specifically go into youth development, because we know that in LA County we have a youth development office, but there are thousands of young people here that don't have a youth center to go to, or need to have certain paperwork, certain requirements to be able to be a part of the youth center, and that's not valid either, because that's also creating it's failing, right? Like the fact that young people are not going to be able to enter a youth center or a program, either because maybe they are on probation, or maybe they have possession on their record, right? That shouldn't be something that restricts them from entering a youth center. And so creating a youth development department that accepts these people like myself, right, that have either been in the system or have been incarcerated or come from parents that have been incarcerated, and creating youth jobs, right? Young people need jobs, and young people need bus passes, and young people need, again, these youth centers that would be able to have these resources and these opportunities. And we also need to make sure that the money doesn't just go into the unrestricted budget, because when it does go into that budget, we know that it doesn't necessarily go back to the community. In 2015 and 2016, $37 was spent on each young person. $37. That's nothing. And so we need to look at where this money is going, and we need to be able to have transparency that it is going to go back into the community, into the communities that were broken, into the communities that were affected by the war on drugs, right? And we need to be able to hold LAPD and hold everyone that has that power accountable, so that that money does go back and that it is invested where it created trauma that, again, is trauma that has been carried over through generations.
Buenos días a todos y a todas. Mi nombre es Bambi Salcedo y soy la presidenta y directora de la coalición translatina. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Bambi Salcedo, and I am the president and the CEO of the Translatino Coalition. We're here gathered today to demand that our elected officials truly invest in the most marginalized communities. We want for this government, for our local government, to really understand what it is that Proposition M is. In Proposition M, it particularly states that social equity program needs to be integrated into the cannabis industry. Unfortunately, this language seems that it has disappeared. And we want to make sure that our elected officials understand what social equity means. It means that there needs to be an intentional investment into the most marginalized communities who have suffered from the stupidity that we continue to experience through the war on drugs. As we know, particularly trans communities who live in this city continue to be marginalized, continue to be criminalized simply for who we are. I myself was a victim of a possession of cannabis, and I still continue to be a victim of the system. And it's important that we understand that individuals like myself deserve second opportunities. We can do great if we intentionally invest in our community. And we are here to really demand for our elected officials to understand what the true meaning of equity means. We're not talking about equality, because equality means sameness. equity means that we all ride on the same level plane, and that we are all included into all the processes, and the money that there is reserved, the tax money that has been generated through this industry needs to be allocated back to the community, not to LAPD. We don't need to arm more cops. We need to make sure that our community continues to thrive, that our communities continue to be elevated, particularly those who are the most marginalized. So I invite you to really call and hold your elected officials accountable for what they're doing to our communities, because they do need to invest and protect and serve all of us through equity. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Felicia Carbajal. I'm the Executive Director of the Social Impact Center. As an organizer and activist working at the intersection of social, economic, environmental, health, gender, and criminal justice, I find myself fortunate to come full circle on this conversation. Who knew that the great-grandchild of a Huntington Park woman during the 70s in the barrio would be standing to talk about marijuana? I was raised on DARE in the 80s, and I was a diehard. At that same time, my neighborhood was filled with gunfire, ambulances, laughter, mariachis, tears, death, and of course, police cars. So when they told you it had bad consequences, you believed them. In the 90s, I entered an institution of higher education. To only 2 years find myself institutionalized down the street from where we stand. In the 2000s, I'm here to tell you that all it took was a few people with a little bit of investment in me that allowed me to thrive. Today I acknowledge that privilege that I have. Privilege that requires me as a queer woman of color impacted by the justice system, who grew up in the barrio and is a longtime cannabis patient, to not only acknowledge my responsibility, but our collective responsibility to take care of one another. LA community, will you join me in our collective responsibility? Mayor Garcetti, will you do the same? City Council, will you follow? While our city has created an innovative program in theory, we have seen a lack of funding. So essentially, all of us have been standing here before you, crying for funding, funding, funding. The report is available. We touch on a lot of things, including funding that program, to creating a cannabis health and social equity working group with all the necessary regulatory oversight, but hopefully not a whole lot more of the bureaucracy that we've seen. We must have equity that allows communities of color who have historically barred the brunt of enforcement to be given an opportunity to heal and thrive, as so many of the speakers before me have stated. We have to use these funds for community reinvestment and health. Our communities deserve to be privy of science-based education about the health, wellness, and economic benefits of this plant. We owe it to communities in LA to create innovative community reinvestment programming that includes us all. We need the city to invest in its people. We need the city to create the infrastructure, and we need them to do it now. As a cannabis patient who started this movement when I was 19 as a part of LGBTQ liberation, I know that I'm honoring the shoulders that we all stand on. Our efforts, then like the efforts today, are built on necessity. Then we were working to ensure that our siblings dying had access to medicine and had an opportunity to die with dignity. Today we are here as our city sits in crisis once again. History must not repeat itself. The war on drugs must end. Our amazing city, the City of Angels, has always taken adversity and used it as an opportunity to grow. So let's grow together. Let's define the national standards and make LA the leader she's supposed to be. It's going to take a lot of heartfelt conversations. All of these conversations must include inclusion and diversity. That is what our report states. That is what is required. It's not hard. We as Angelenos have that power. This requires us to build a bigger table, a table that allows for all communities living at these intersections to be able to thrive, to be included in the conversation, to have their stories, have their struggle acknowledged. And once again, we get back to the root of the conversation, which is funding. Mayor Garcetti, City Council President Wesson, and esteemed council, we believe communities of color disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs across the city are worthy of social and economic development. To my siblings on the council who sit at this intersection, we ask you to be bold. We believe that it's incumbent on the City of Los Angeles to be that national leader and show the world that our city is proud to right the wrongs that she herself has been a part of, and begins the much needed work on reinvestment in our communities who deserve this reinvestment. Again, I ask you, will you join us? Will you help us build a fair, just, and equitable cannabis industry that has corporate social responsibility and community reinvestment at its foundation? The community is demanding this. Be a leader in this conversation means adequately funding community reinvestment now. Thank you.
So we'll be available for questions. This was our last speaker. Let's get a round of applause for everyone who participated. Thank you very much for coming. We'll be available again to answer any questions of the press.
Gabriella, your question for Mr. Garcetti.
Well, that's not the press conference. They've stopped the live stream, so we don't get to hear what the press is asking. But a couple of good questions in the chat, however, that I can maybe address for our audience, which is really our intent. Let's see. CCR TV, thanks for joining in and sharing and asking all these good questions. This was a press conference hosted by the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 770 Cannabis Division here in Los Angeles. And other groups, including that was the Social Impact Center head, Felicia Carbajal, speaking at the end there. Very active in equity, always at the testifying before. We covered the city council meeting that discussed this. The video is available on our channel, and maybe I'll drop a link in. But when we were trying to stop this theft, when they were trying to stop this theft of $10 million that was basically in the law that Los Angeles was going to get for social equity funding, to try to inject some equity into the cannabis industry, because does seem to be all about the cash. And that's why the Safe Banking Act will probably pass in Congress, because the banks want their cannabis cash. And that's the way they're going to get it. So the local issue is that the LAPD is $80 million in the rears for overtime. And they're looking for ways to pay it. And guess what? Here's this $10 million promised to social equity funding in Los Angeles, just sitting there, not really being used right now. Why don't we just borrow it or, steal it and pay down the overtime? So that's essentially what's going on while they're dragging the feet of phase 3, or rather trying to start phase 3 of licensing for outside groups before fully funding and fully implementing the social equity program, which was promised and guaranteed in the laws here locally in Los Angeles and in the Prop 64. So that's what this press conference was essentially about. Thank you, CCR TV, for your interjection. As I say, Chella's not in today. I've got morning hair, so I've got my old Bernie hat on. Still burning from the Fox town hall last night. Anybody watch that? I want to know, how did Nina Turner and Ro Khanna, the campaign chairs over there, get all of those Bernie people into the town hall at Fox? There must be some serious Bernie 2020 insiders over at Fox News to stack that audience so full of Bernie supporters. I don't see call-in responses like that at Bernie rallies that effective than what Sanders did last night on the Fox town hall. Best decision ever to go to Fox and do that town hall. Screw you, Democrats. That audience was full of independents and Brett was very funny trying to say, well, there are Democrats here and independents and Republicans. And how many of you have private insurance? Everybody. A lot of people. Like 90% of the audience. And how many of you would give that up for Bernie's plan? Everybody in the audience. Hand goes up. Perfect example of know the answer to the question before you ask the jury. Know what they're going to say before you ask it. They just, man, Bernie was on fire last night. He was burning up. And we have a big announcement. Check these out, guys. We got our new cards. Our last cards were kind of cheesy, but we got our new cards, and these are kind of special cards. You ever find that need to roll up a joint and you just don't have a crutch. You don't have a filter. I like a crutch. And you reach for an old business card and tear it up. Well, I figured there had to be a better solution for that. And guess what? There is. It's called a crutch card. And there you go. 3 perforated crutches ready to go. Free the plant, free the people, pot for peace. You just take your crutch card here. You got your Reefer Revolution, all the info you need there. Sundays at 4:20 Pacific. Restreaming, multi-streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, DLive, and Weed TV, the Cannabis Media Network. You can just go to reeferrevolution.us. Takes you right to the channel. DC and Coach Chella. Follow us on the socials at DC420LA and at Reefer Rev Show. And you need a crutch. There it is. Free the plant. Free the people. And check this out, guys. Hemp paper. Oops. Hemp paper, perforated. Soy-based ink. Ready to roll. Right there, you got a nice pot for peace crutch to roll up into your joint. I've already done one. It worked very well. That's it. So we're super excited about those. And we've got a couple of events that we're going to be going to this weekend. We've got the Sensi magazine event Friday night we're going to here in Los Angeles. And Saturday, still up in the air as to where we're going for 420. Who knows? We may end up just doing dabs here in the studio. Invite somebody over. And I'm smoking a little Skywalker this morning. Thanks for sausage gravy biscuit. Welcome to the show. Subscribe, get notifications, ring that bell for when we do go live for special broadcasts like this. Producer Coach Chella found this event online and said, hey, we should probably either go or try to cover this. And they were nice enough to stream it on their Facebook page. So thank you, UFCW 770 local. My former local, I'm still like member in, what is it? It's like on withdrawal or whatever. I'm technically still a member, I think. But I'll get a little, I'm getting a little, hopefully, cross my fingers, a couple bucks from them when I retire. Because I did 20 years almost with UFCW. Not quite 20. I think maybe 10 vested. Yeah. But that put me in the middle class, union job, middle class, at least a living wage here in Los Angeles. For a good part of my life. And then I got into the film industry and started doing this craziness. But, hey, listen, you create your own reality. And our new reality is this. This is part of our new reality is educating folks about cannabis, the laws, the politics of pot, marijuana in the mainstream media, because unfortunately that is still what the media calls it. They're starting to change. And that is also what it's called in all the laws still. So we have to get rid of the old laws and put in some new laws and maybe renaming recapturing the actual name of the plant. In our show, of course, we get criticism about the name of our show, Reefer Revolution. But it's ours is a reefer revolution to destroy the reefer madness. So it's sort of just a play on words to take back these crazy, silly words. Shoes. The DEA has a word this time they call it shoes. They did it at the Hash Bash. People were trying to come up with names for the plant. And they did mention the DEA's new edition of shoes. I've never heard that. But call it whatever you like. When you recreate, you medicate. It's a healing plant. It's an agricultural. We've come up with it along with the help of Alexis and others in our regular show. We've come up with the moniker of a medicinal agricultural plant. I'm probably getting that wrong. But it's a medicinal herb. It's a medicinal plant. And there's a great panel we're going to put up from the state of Cannabis. We're going to start putting up the panels. The keynote from Representative Tulsi Gabbard is up on the channel. Please check that out. And we're going to start putting up the panels from state of Cannabis. So another good reason to subscribe and get notifications from when I start dropping those. There's about half a dozen panels that were just phenomenal. And amazing information about the medicinal value of this plant, as well as social equity and the need to change the laws on a federal level, as well as, we don't need to fund the police anymore like they're doing in L.A., literally taking $10 million out of the hands of social equity and putting it to pay off $80 million in overtime for the LAPD. And that's what that press conference was all about this morning. So thank you guys all for joining us this morning. I am going to sign off, and maybe I'll play some videos for you since you are all with us this morning. So I might as well play some, and you can DVR, back it up to watch the press conference if you join late. I'm going to continue producing for our next show and get things going. The new cards are very exciting. And our show is on Sundays, 4:20 Pacific. Join us then. Free the plant, free the people. Bot for peace. I'll be hanging out in the chat too, checking in. So, any questions, I may jump in. I'm going to play some videos. See you guys.
I'd love to chat with you about HR 1588.
Okay.
Descheduling cannabis.
Will
Why
do.
don't you tell us how you guys are supporting that and what we all can do?
So as federal advocates, what we do is when we endorse a bill, and we've endorsed several this year, what that means is that whenever we're taking office meetings, we're essentially bringing those bills up. And we have a slate this year of legislation that we're supporting that all basically, it covers a lot of ground as far as the immediate needs of veterans in terms of research and access, and the long-term need for legalization.
What would you want to tell our viewers who are into cannabis as medicine? That's our people. We're not like brand reviewers. Not that that's bad. It's just not our wheelhouse.
Right.
We believe that cannabis is medicine, and we want it off the Schedule 1.
Yes, very much true.
How can we help support your efforts?
So there are a lot of national advocates that are working on descheduling and legalization. NORML is certainly one of them, and they're a chapter-based organization that are open to all citizens. For veterans who are interested in becoming advocates, or interacting, or essentially doing outreach within their local communities, and basically trying to build awareness of the need. A lot of veterans are, half of all veterans are over 65. It's a generation that has a considerable amount of stigma associated with cannabis use. So it's very important for younger veterans like myself to, be that bridge for other vets. And, older veterans, seniors, younger veterans, like we all have a lot of the same co-occurring issues. Chronic pain, traumatic brain injuries, anxiety, depression, name it, essentially. And certainly our pill load looks very similar. So, and if it works for veterans with all the things that we're dealing with, it certainly works for everyone else. And while, a lot of it is still, based in anecdote, I don't look at the hundreds of veterans who have told me personally that to save their lives and say, I don't believe you, right? Like, that's ridiculous. These are folks that have no reason to lie and certainly have every reason to want to improve their health and basically try to live that pharmaceuticals have largely robbed them of.
Absolutely. Right on. Well, thank you so much
you.
for taking a few minutes with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Eric.
It's really about the business of cannabis, and how varied and multi-diverse and cultural and, and from the food to the atmosphere, every single market is totally different, and yet that one thing that bonds us all is this little plant called cannabis.
Yeah. That's right. Well, today we were at the State of Cannabis with Cheryl Schumann, extraordinaire, globetrotter, creating wonderful cannabis outcomes all over the world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the near future? I heard you were globetrotting.
Yes. I've been traveling an average of about 200,000 miles every year for the past 6 years, I think. And, what's really exciting now is I had the good fortune of being a pioneer starting in 1992, working in political and media strategy, and basically trying to get the vote out. Because at the end of the day, unless people get out and vote, we won't have good policy. And that's why people really need to get activated and educated, and like with what you're doing, podcasts, all that sort of thing, social media are really magical to empower people, because a lot of times they don't know what they don't know until they learn, right? And then the other thing too, it's really breaking the stereotype and breaking the stigma. I mean, I remember, the first time that I had cannabis, and I was looking at it, and I had a little clone, a little baby plant, and I was looking, I was like, they're such cute little plants. Of course, I was a little bit medicated.
That's all right.
I was thinking, what a cute little plant. I'm like, it could heal a multitude of illnesses, but it could heal the world with worldwide economies. And I was like, ding, and it just, I was like, oh my God, this is just a simple rebranding campaign.
Yes.
And who knew or who would think that our government would lie to us? I mean, come on.
Shocked.
And then it was like, I was looking at, and the counterculture has always been very, very political and have been on the front lines of this drug war for a long, long time. And I found it very, very interesting. There was a hippie colony up Twin Creek Holler where I grew up in Appalachia on a tobacco farm. Wow. And I remembered, the number one thing I remembered about them is, there's a lot of tie-dye and everything, but the other thing that was clearly definitive was they were so happy all the time. I mean, they're always smiling and like always baking cookies, and I always smelled the smell. I wasn't quite sure what the smell was because I was only 10 at the time. Sure, but I was thinking, I just want to be happy like that, and who knew? So in many, many ways, as far as lifestyle choices and just wellness, that was my first introduction. So a lot of times when people say hippies this, I'm like, hey, the hippies were right.
Yeah,
organic foods, cannabis is like a wellness agent. Yeah, I mean, it's like, and everyone I've met, are they unconventional? Well, sure, we're all different. We all dance to the beat of our own drum, but I really like them. So it was like my first entree, and then that's when I realized just how culturally diverse all of us are. I mean, I was born at Twin Creek Holler with no running water or electricity until I was 14 years old. Yeah, I milked cows and gathered eggs every day, and everyone's like, really? You
no running water?
No, not until I was 17. Oh my God. A lot of people are like, some people, they just assume that I'm a trust fund baby or something because a lot of people who are anti-women or whatever, they just don't believe that a woman could make it on her own, that could build her own destiny. And that's one of the things I've really been involved with, since I got into this. I thought, if we can empower the women, and I was looking through this case study of a woman named Pauline Sabin. Have you heard of her? Pauline Sabin was a woman of substance, a woman of high society, an heiress back in the 1930s when alcohol and cannabis were first prohibited. So it's prohibition that we're really fighting, which we're still in prohibition days.
Yes, we are.
And so I was looking at her, and she, along with these 10 women, formed this coalition, and they lobbied and got people out to vote, and they're credited with overturning alcohol prohibition with 10 little ladies and Pauline Sabin, and literally changing the course of history.
So while I'm thinking about it, write down Tulsi, Tulsi, 2020.com. And what also would also be great is while she's up here, take a picture, show her a shout of support to your following, and ask your followers to retweet or share, because we have her fighting for us, and we need to fight for her and also the veterans and everyone else as well. So please make a note of that. So Tulsi, let me tell you a little bit about Tulsi Gabbard, our U.S. representative. She's a Democratic candidate for president who was first elected to Congress in 2012 to serve the people of Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District. Over the past 6 years, she has served on the Homeland Security and Foreign Affairs Committee in Congress and is currently a member of the House Armed Services and Financial Services Committee. Tulsi is a major in the Army National Guard, where she has served for 16 years. She deployed twice to the Middle East and is one of the very first female combat veterans ever elected to Congress. And this next statement is probably the most important in the bio. Tulsi's campaign is completely powered by the people. So it's very, very important that we support her also with campaign donations. It doesn't matter what the amount is. Anything as a simple thank you is going to be very welcomed, I'm sure. She doesn't accept any kind of campaign contributions from corporations, lobbyists, and political action committees. It's all people funded. She's worked across the aisle to introduce Ending Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act and the Marijuana Data Collection Act, which has been lauded by the cannabis industry for a scientific approach to the decriminalization of cannabis, and she has also been endorsed by NORML. So please get out your cameras, make a note of Tulsi 2020, get ready to not only applaud her, but give her a great round of applause and gratitude. Tulsi Gabbard.
Aloha. Aloha. It is a privilege and an honor to be here with all of you today. I want to say thank you to Ryan and Luis for your invitation to come. It was a bit of a last-minute thing, so I want to give a special shout-out to Eric. We went on his website, and my sister spoke to him and asked him if there was any way that I could come and share a few thoughts with all of you. So he was supposed to speak for longer, but he's given me a few minutes of his time slot. So thank you very much, Eric. It's been great to be here. Thanks, Peter. I was glad to hear your update and the research that you're doing to be able to provide people with the information necessary to dispel so much of the myths and misinformation and even disinformation campaigns that are being waged to try to stop this important progress from being made. I think there's something that is at the core of what we are trying to do here in this push to end the federal marijuana prohibition that's too often missed. That what is really at stake here, what is at the core of this challenge and this opportunity, is freedom. This is about freedom. Freedom of choice for every single one of us in this country. To make that choice and to do so without the dark shadow of criminalization and prosecution. We have to address the fact that far too many people's freedoms have been taken away for far too long because of this federal prohibition on marijuana and because of this failed war on drugs. The fact that marijuana, something that is not even in the same category as alcohol or tobacco, is still illegal in this country is unacceptable. The fact that 659,700 people were arrested in 2017 because of a marijuana law violation is unacceptable. Out of those arrests, almost 91% of those charged were arrested for mere possession. Now, you saw a picture that Eric showed when we reintroduced recently the federal, ending the Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act with my Republican colleague, Don Young from Alaska. And it was important that as we were reintroducing this legislation, we had different leaders of the community represented. And Bill was representing veterans who were there speaking to the impact that you've heard of today from Eric on our veterans, how this continued prohibition is negatively impacting us. We heard from small business owners who were there talking about the difficulty of the contradiction between federal law and state law and how that is inhibiting businesses from growing and furthering this dangerous cash-based economy. We also heard from a young man who has been on the receive, lives in Virginia. He was going to college studying computer science, going about his life, looking to further himself, provide opportunities for his future when he was arrested for marijuana possession. He was given 2 back-to-back mandatory minimum sentences of 5 years. He spent 10 years in prison, dropped his college pursuit of a college degree and went and spent 10 years in prison in Virginia. His cellmate, he said, was someone who was convicted of murder, had shot someone in the chest and killed them. His cellmate was released from prison before he was because of these mandatory minimums that he faced. Now, this was one of the first times that Harry had kind of spoken out and shared his story. He's not an activist. He's not involved with any organizations. He's just somebody who cares enough about this issue to see that there are no others who have to go through what he went through. He put, yes, members of Congress, leaders in Washington, but leaders all across this country to recognize the urgency with which we have to end this prohibition. This is something that we are working towards with the existing legislation that Eric talked about, and this is something that if I have the opportunity to serve you as president, that I will bring about. Now, as we look at these outdated laws that we have, and that we have so many people in this country still being arrested for the mere possession of marijuana, we have to look at why. What is one of the root causes of this problem, and the fact that we have not yet made the kind of progress we need to make? It's ironic to see how big pharmaceutical companies like Purdue Pharma, who have lied and cheated and deceived the American people so that they can sell more of these highly addictive drugs, have been able to do so and walk away scot-free with their pockets full, while guys like Harry waste 10 years of their lives in prison. Even as we see Congress continuing to fail to act on passing our legislation, ending the Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act, we hear many of the same politicians who oppose it calling for urgent action to address the opioid crisis that we face in this country. This opioid crisis that is ravaging and devastating so many people's lives. We see the influence of big money in politics over and over again, and how it is negatively impacting all of our lives, and how it's covering up the truth, which is that in states across this country that have legalized some form of marijuana, whether it's medical or adult use or both, states that have legalized marijuana have seen a direct correlation in reducing the numbers of people who are addicted to opioids and reducing the numbers of opioid-related deaths. We have to address and bring to light some of the statistics that Eric shared about how this prohibition is continuing to negatively impact our veterans, our brothers and sisters who we've served with, people who've served across generations, who are dealing with extreme post-traumatic stress, who are dealing with chronic pain and injuries because of their service and their time in combat. Yet when they go to the VA and they ask for help, because of this federal prohibition, they are not given the options to what they could really use, to things that could actually help them. Instead, time and time again, they are said, hey, opioids, this is the only thing that you have. VA doctors can't even give a reference and give a referral saying, hey, here, you can go and take this prescription to a local dispensary. These are some of the reasons why I've been fighting so hard to make this change in Congress. The Ending Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act of 2019 is the only bipartisan piece of legislation in Congress that would end the prohibition. And it would do so very simply. Very simply and very cleanly, it removes marijuana from the federal controlled substances list. And we've talked about some of the personal impacts that this would have on individuals, but there are great economic benefits that we as a country could see by passing this simple piece of legislation. We've made progress with the farm bill that was passed with regards to industrial hemp, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We've seen how many benefits and end-use products can come from industrial hemp, and we've seen how it is far more lucrative for farmers to grow this per acre than the leading commodity crops that our government is currently subsidizing, like corn and soy, wheat, cotton, and canola. We've seen how industrial hemp can be used to replace many of these products made from these commodities, and often with fewer inputs. We've also seen how it's a much more beneficial crop to grow when we're looking at the environmental impact and quality of our soil. We've seen how ending this prohibition can benefit small business owners and create jobs. The value of CBD market is growing fast, and due to its broader market base, higher pricing, and efficacy of treating numerous medical conditions, we're seeing small businesses and entrepreneurs pop up all over the country trying to take advantage of this growing market demand. Right alongside this legislation to end the federal marijuana prohibition, we've also introduced another important bill to deal with the excuse that's often given, which is, hey, look, there just aren't enough studies or research done to show that ending the prohibition will not have a negative impact. So we introduced the Marijuana Data Collection Act of 2019, which commissions a study from the National Academy of Sciences, a neutral federal arbiter that can gather data, study the effects of states that have legalized medicinal and adult use of marijuana from a variety of perspectives, including state revenues, health, substance abuse, opioids, criminal justice, employment, on a whole host of levels. This will provide that undisputed, consolidated information and fact-based research to dispel so many of those myths and disinformation that are being put out there. I'll tell you one example of why this legislation is so important. In Hawaii, let's see, I think it was last year, in 2018, there was a bill that was passed by our state House and state Senate with bipartisan support that would allow opioid abuse to be added to one of the acceptable uses for medical marijuana in our state. This bill was vetoed by our governor, even though it had overwhelming support. One of the reasons why he said he was vetoing is because there's just not enough research. There's not enough research to show that someone who is addicted to opioids can actually be helped by medical marijuana. I was really, really angry when I heard that news, because we have seen in Hawaii and across the country how many people's lives have been saved because of access to medical marijuana, how they have gotten off of this addiction. But it's that kind of excuse that this study seeks to address, to make it so that that can no longer be used as a reason to stop us from making this progress. Another bill that we recently passed just out of the Financial Services Committee in Congress a few weeks ago is the SAFE Banking Act, the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act. States like ours in Hawaii, here in California, states across the country still are dealing with the fact that because of this federal prohibition, there's no access to banking and financial services to speak of. It was a monumental thing to pass this bill out of the Financial Services Committee. We will pass it out of the House of Representatives, and we'll work hard to get it through the Senate. Now, this fight on this issue has been and continues to be an uphill battle, but I really feel like momentum is growing in our favor. We, the people, standing up and making sure that our voices are heard is what will make the difference. This is how we will bring about this change. This is how we are seeing this change taking place, not just in states that are largely Democratic, but also in Republican states as well. People like yourselves speaking out and sharing your stories, whether as small business owners or veterans or people who've gone through the criminal justice system. It is only when we, the people, stand up and make sure that our voices are heard that we can overcome those great obstacles that are set before us, whether they be by self-serving politicians or big special interests or big corporations or those who do not see it in their interest to get this passed. This is a big change that is long overdue, and it is up to every single one of us to take action to bring about that change and to hold leaders accountable, to hold lawmakers accountable for standing in the way of progress. I'm running for president because we need to bring about this sea change in our leadership, where we have leaders who are not beholden to special interests, leaders who are interested first and foremost in putting service above self, putting people ahead of profits, putting people ahead of politics, putting the well-being and the interests of people and our planet at the forefront of everything that we do. We will have different ideas and different solutions that we can offer, but we can come together to make this kind of progress when we put the interests of our people first. So I ask for your support, I ask for your consideration, because it is only when we stand together to create this movement of positive change focused on putting service above self that we can actually make that change a reality. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for letting me speak to you. Aloha.
And everyone, let me ask you, where do you find this woman online? What's the website address again? Tulsi 2020. One more time. What's the website address again? Tulsi. Very good. And how many of you are going to send out your pictures and your videos to thank her and get behind her if you can make a donation and support her on social media? Thank you so much, Tulsi. We need more Tulsis in the world.
I'll agree with that. We do need more Tulsis in the world. And she indeed did make it to the debate stage. So that issue, as she said in our interview, and many others will be on the debates, the stage in June. And are they all in June now? I don't know, the two of them. Along Andrew Yang is on the debate stage. So I'm glad those voices are there. I'd like to see Mike Gravel up there too. That'd be fun. But because we need more voices for peace up there. And despite the criticism and challenges to Tulsi's peace cred, I do believe she is against interventionist wars. And when's the last time you heard karma brought up at a town hall, at her town hall? So, yes, I'm definitely supporting Bernie Sanders. I'm also supporting Tulsi Gabbard. There's rumors that they had discussion before she announced, the Congress member announced, and Bernie encouraged her to run. Of course, she was a big supporter last time, took a lot of heat for Bernie and did the right thing. So there may be something going on here more than we know. And I'm hoping and looking forward to her at some point, because she certainly is not the smears or whatever it is that has kept her out of the polling as certainly being effective. So hopefully the her standing up for these issues on the far left, First Amendment issues, war and peace, many others that are being pointed out by much of the independent media on YouTube, particularly, that voice and those things will be on the debate stage, and Bernie can maintain his middle of the road, more center left cred of progressive values. I don't know. It's, politics is crazy. And especially now, it's the theater of the absurd. It really is. It's the theater of the absurd. Everything. Kim Kardashian's getting a law degree. That was just the last thing this morning. It was like, which is great. I think it's great. Maybe she'll push for cannabis removal. Maybe she'll push for the ending federal marijuana prohibition act. And even Tulsi has tried. That's what it's been called that for a long time. That movement has been called that for a long time. So I don't think it was that necessarily her name that she came up with, because that's been around for a while, the movement. So, but I think they should change it to the Trump Act, the total repeal of unjust marijuana prohibition, and he'll just sign it sight unseen and we have to worry about it. So, and that way, and it's easier to remember, right? The Trump Act. That was just I got a laugh out of the Congress members. That was kind of cool. All right, guys, I'm going to sign out for now and get to work cutting those panels. I got to cut those panels and get those up, because the panels from the state of Cannabis were amazing. And I want to get them up on the channel. So I'm going to start to get to work on that today and get them up as soon as I can. Probably launch one by the end of the day. So subscribe, get notifications, ring the bell so you can watch those panels as they come up. They're going to be awesome. And they were awesome. And I thanks again to Luis Rivera and Collective Strategies and Ryan Bacchus and Adriana Gomez for bringing us on board and allowing us to be part of the state of Cannabis. And we look forward to our future co-creating together with those great folks. So thank you guys for watching this special broadcast this morning at the press conference about social equity here in Los Angeles. It's not good what's going on here in LA with this green stampede happening. And it was supposed to be a big part of the Cannabis, and it was at our event on Saturday, that we went to, and it should be on the minds of everyone in this corporate cannabis move. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you on Sunday. Free the plant, free the people, pot for peace.